Rounding numbers to the nearest 10. If I have a number here, let's say 57, and I want to round to the nearest 10, I'm going to put this just to remember what am I rounding. So to the nearest 10, 5 tenths. What should I do? Should I stay at number 5, 5 tenths, or should I go up to 6 tenths? So let's see what happens here. This digit turns to the neighbor on the left of the right for advice, and we have all the digits here. The answers are, if you get a 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4, the advice is going to be to stay. If you have 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9, the advice is going to be go to the next 10. So number 5 goes to 7 and says, 7, 7, should I stay or should I go to the next 10? Number 7 says go to the next. So what's the next 10? 5, and the next number is 6. 6 tenths. 60. That's the answer. But let's say we have another number. Let's say we have 32. And we want to round to the nearest 10. So, first of all, we have to find the tenths. These are 3 tenths. And then the 3 goes to the neighbor on the right and says, what do you think, neighbor, neighbor, what do you think? Should I stay or should I go to the next 10? And then number 2 always will respond, stay. So 3 stays at 3 tenths. 3 tenths is 30. Let's say we have another number. Let's say we have 75. And we want to round to the nearest 10. So here are the tenths. This is the tenths place. And the 10 looks for advice to the neighbor. And then says, neighbor, neighbor, what do you think? Should I stay or should I go to the next 10? And the 5 will respond, go to the next 10. So number 7 goes to the next 10, which is 8 tenths. 8 tenths is 80. But let's play a little bit with more digits. Let's say we have the number 266. And we want to round to the closest 10. So we find the tens first. This is the 10, the tens place. And the 10 goes to the neighbor on the right and says, neighbor, neighbor, what do you think? Should I stay at 6 tenths or should I go to 7 tenths? And the answer of 6 is go to the next 10. So instead of having 6 tenths, the next number is 7. 7 tenths is 70. And this neighbor just moves down. Let's try with another number. Let's try with 1, 4, 2. 142. And then we want to round to the nearest 10. So ones, tens, hundreds. Here are the tens. We have 4 tenths. And then the 4 goes to the neighbor and says, neighbor, neighbor, what do you think? Should I stay at 4 tenths or should I go to 5 tenths? And number 2 responds, stay. So 4 stays at 4 tenths, and the neighbor on the left just moves next to it. So 142 rounded to the nearest 10 is 140. Let's try another number. Let's say we have 870 71. Okay, same thing. The first thing we have to know is where the tenths are, and we know these are tenths, ones, tenths, and hundreds. So here are the tenths, and 7 tenths asks the neighbor on the right, neighbor, what do you think? Should I stay at 7 tenths or should I go up to 8 tenths? And number 1 responds, stay. So number 7 stays at 7 tenths. And the other neighbor on the left just moves in. 871 rounded to the closest 10 is 870. And let's try with 4 digits now. It's the same thing. Let's say we have 5, we have 2, we have 4, and we have 9. The first thing we have to do is to find the tenths because we are rounding to the closest 10. So 1 tenths. Here are the tenths. We have 4 tenths. And the 4 tenths, look at the neighbor on the right and says, neighbor, what do you think? Should I stay at 4 tenths or should I go up to 5 tenths? And we have number 9 is the neighbor. And number 9 says, go to the next 10. So instead of staying at 4 tenths, it's going to take the advice to go to the next 10. 5 tenths. 5 tenths is 50. And the neighbors on the left just move in. 5,249 rounded to the nearest 10 is 5,250.